In 2012, Facebook ran an experiment on 689,000 people and didn't tell a single one of them. Those weren't volunteers. Nobody signed up. They were literally just on the app, scrolling, liking their cousin's dumb vacation photos, and the whole time, a team of data scientists was reaching into their feeds and turning a dial, feeding some of them sadness and feeding others joy. And this wasn't to sell them stuff. It was just to see if they could change what those people felt without ever talking to them. And they could. They called it emotional contagion, and they even published it. Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2014. This isn't some random file that got leaked. It's a peer-reviewed paper where they basically brag about it. And it worked. Emotions got manipulated to extremes, with no conversations and no contact. Just the machine quietly deciding what a few 100,000 people were gonna feel that day. You'd think somebody catches this. Cornell's name was on the study. Every university has a board, an IRB, and the entire job of that board is to stop this exact thing from happening. You don't get to run experiments on human beings without them knowing. That's the one rule. Cornell's board later admitted they never looked at it at all. In Facebook's defense, you agreed to this. It was in the terms of service. The terms of service said nothing about psychological research. Not a word. They just decided agree to use the app also meant agree to be experimented on. And here's the part that should really mess with you. In 1977, a Senate committee drags the CIA into a room over MKUltra, a program built to screw with the minds of American citizens without their consent. It gets defunded, files are destroyed, at least most of them, and we all get handed this promise. Never again. Never again does anybody run mind control experiments on the public in the dark. That promise did not last long. And in this instance that happened to make it into the public awareness, nobody had to break in. Nobody hid anywhere. They wrote it up and put it in a journal and stuck a university's name on the front page. So no, the question was never, did they do it? They told us they did it. The question is, how the hell is this still legal now? And why almost none of us even flinched? That's where this starts. I'm Ellie. This is Fourth Wall. Let's open the file. To get how we got here, you have to get what these things actually are, because almost everybody has it wrong, including me for a long time. Facebook feels like a place you get to see your friends, and they run some ads to keep the lights on. YouTube feels like the same deal. Twitter, X, feels like a town square with billboards in it. All of that's wrong. And the wrongness is the entire game. These platforms aren't selling space on a page. They're selling you. And I mean that literally. Your attention, your behavior, the stuff you click, the stuff you want, the psychological shape of you as a human being. And this is the part that should really bother you. What you're going to do next. That's the product. That's what changes hands. The videos, the posts, the outrage, memes, breaking news, none of that is the product. That's the bait, and we're the fish getting caught. A Harvard professor named Shoshana Zuboff gave this a name in 2019. She calls it surveillance capitalism. And her definition is honestly colder than anything I could write personally. Human experience treated as free, raw material. Yours, mine, everybody's. Scraped up and converted into behavioral data. The plain version, everything you do on there gets harvested. What you click, what you don't click, what you stop and stare at for half a second longer than you meant to, what you type out, think better of, and then delete. And it doesn't get harvested to show you an ad. It gets harvested to predict you, and then the prediction gets sold to whoever pays the most. And here's the thing, Silicon Valley didn't even invent this. They stole it from television. Let's go back to 1968.
An NBC executive named Paul Klein comes up with a concept he calls
least objectionable programming. His whole argument, nobody turns on the TV to watch a show. They turn on the TV to watch TV. So your job as a network isn't to make something people love. It's to make something people won't shut off. Not the best, not the most meaningful, purely retention. Silicon Valley took that ugly little idea and shot it up with steroids. And they added the one thing TV never had, real-time feedback. Television could tell you how many people watched, eventually, roughly, a guess. These platforms can tell you, in milliseconds, exactly which word in a headline made you pause, which image made you share, which flavor of getting mad got the most comments out of you. And then it's turned around and used instantly to tune what the next person sees, at scale, on its own, forever.
The thing that we are trying to do at Facebook is just help people connect and communicate more efficiently.
This is the machine that was getting built while the rest of us were posting pictures of our lunch and families. In 2017, a guy named Jeff Hammerbacher, former Facebook data scientist, one of the early ones, helped build the thing, sat down with Bloomberg and said this, quote, "The best minds of my generation are thinking about how to make people click ads. That sucks," unquote. Sit with who said that for a second, because it's not some random critic on the outside. This is the guy who helped build the systems, telling you what the systems were for. So let's talk about what the algorithm actually wants, because it's not quality, it's not whether the thing is even true, and it's definitely not you being okay. It's engagement. That's it. Time on the app. Shares, comments, reactions. Those numbers, and only those numbers, decide what gets shoved in front of millions of people and what quietly disappears. And here's the trap the whole thing is built on. Outrage feeds every single one of those numbers. In 2021, the Wall Street Journal drops what gets called the Facebook files. Built on a pile of internal documents a whistleblower named Frances Haugen walked out the door with. One of them is a presentation from 2018. Facebook's own researchers warning their own leadership that the algorithm was actively cranking up content that made people angry and divided. And one line in that presentation just says it flat out. The algorithms exploit the brain's pull towards negativity. And that's not me putting some journalist's spin on this. That's Facebook describing Facebook in a room to its own bosses. Same documents. They'd also studied what Instagram does to teenage girls. Instagram, which they own. Their own research, it made body image worse for 1 in 3 teen girls. 1 in 3. Now here's the actual machinery and why outrage works on you and myself as well as it does. Your brain doesn't treat all emotions the same. Threat, anger, disgust, fear, that stuff gets processed faster and hits harder than anything good. And that's a feature that kept your ancestors alive. The ones who flinched at movement in the grass made it, and the ones who shrugged got eaten alive. Here's the problem. A system built to exploit that wiring can't tell the difference between a saber-toothed tiger in the grass and a tweet about some celebrity. It has no idea. It just knows that one made you react and that one didn't. And then it gives you more of whatever made you react. Researchers at NYU pulled apart 2.7 million Facebook posts from news outlets. Posts loaded with what they called moral emotional language. Outrage talk, threat talk, us versus them pulled 67% more interaction than posts without it. 67%. That's the algorithm standing up and announcing to every publisher, every creator, every campaign, and every newsroom on Earth, here's exactly what I will pay you for. And they heard it loud and clear. This is where the money and the content smash into each other, because the second everybody figures out what gets amplified, they start making more of it. Maybe on purpose, but mostly not. The anchor who used to report the news watches the guy who yells about the news pull bigger numbers. The politician who used to actually legislate watches the one who performs, being furious, rake in the donations. The writer who used to file 1,200 careful words watches some thread engineered to piss people off gain 10,000 followers overnight. Nobody sent a memo. Nobody even called a meeting because nobody had to. The system taught them this. This is the part where a different kind of channel tells you who did it. They'd name the bad guys, hand you a villain with a motive, and a secret room where they all shook hands on it. I'm not gonna do that. And that's not because there aren't names. There are absolutely names, but because the villain version is actually the comforting one. And I need you to understand why. Mark Zuckerberg didn't sit in a room one day and decide to make America angrier.
Sergey Brin and Larry Page didn't build Google and later acquire YouTube to radicalize your uncle. What they did is quieter than that and worse.
They built machines that optimize for engagement and then turned them loose on the entire planet. They got handed research by their own people about what those machines were doing to us, and then looked at the harm, looked at the growth numbers, and chose the growth numbers. That's a sociopathic business decision, not a conspiracy. And that should scare you more, not less. Because a conspiracy you can expose. A conspiracy has a center, a plan, a handful of people who knew and then did it anyway. So you can drag them into the light, and it's over. A business model doesn't work like that. Nobody has to be evil. Nobody has to know. Everybody just has to follow the money, and then the thing runs itself forever, with no one's hands ever on it. Roger McNamee was an early Facebook investor. He actually mentored Zuckerberg, and he turned into one of the loudest critics the company has. In 2019, he wrote a book about it, and his read was basically this. The problem isn't that people running Facebook are bad people. It's that the incentives of the business are pointed the wrong way, and that way is against their own users, against democracy itself. Misaligned incentives. That's the polite, clinical phrase for what happens when you pay a system to do one thing and it quietly destroys something else to get it. Now here's the comparison, and I want you to do this one carefully because it's easy to overstate, and I don't want to do that. MKUltra cost the CIA somewhere around $10 million over 20 years. It touched, at most, a few thousand people. It needed classified sign-off, government money, unwilling subjects, a whole machine of secrecy just to function. And then when it got exposed, it got shut down. The attention economy runs on 3 billion people at once. No classified anything, no government check. And the subjects, they're not unwilling, they're thrilled. They buy their own devices to get in the door. The consent is sitting in a terms of service document the company knows damn well nobody reads. And when its harm gets exposed, it doesn't get shut down, it gets a Senate hearing. Where a senator asks Mark Zuckerberg if he knows what Finsta means. The scale isn't the same, and I'm not telling you it's the same. MKUltra was a scalpel, but influence without consent, that part is the same. And the result? Billions of people walking around inside an information environment that they can't see, being shaped every second by machines that were never once asked to care whether they're okay. That's not a scalpel. That's behavior modification on a global scale. Here's what the records hold up. These platforms got built on an ad model that runs on one fuel: your engagement. The machines they built to maximize it figured out, on their own, from the data, that fear and anger and outrage were the most reliable fuel there is. So they pumped it, at a global scale, automatically, every second, for more than 10 years. Their own internal research saw the damage, and the damage didn't change the plan because the growth never stopped. That's a documented fact, not a theory or an opinion. And here's what the record doesn't hold up yet. And I'm telling you this part on purpose, because the second I pretend to know more than I do, I become the exact thing this channel exists to inoculate you against. We can't fully see what these algorithms are doing right now. We don't get to read the research these companies are running today, and we don't know the real, total extent of how this has bent our politics, our health, the way we decide things together as a country. Those are open questions, and people are studying them, but it takes years. And the companies change the machine faster than anybody could even study it. So I'm not going to hand you a verdict that I don't have. But here's what we do know, and I really want you to hear this. The most effective behavior modification program in the history of the human species isn't classified. No government runs it. It doesn't have a code name. There's no file buried in a vault somewhere. It has a logo. A few of them, actually. And you almost certainly opened one of them today, before you pressed play on this video. Maybe even to get to this video. In 1977, Senator Ted Kennedy stood up in front of the Senate talking about MKUltra and said, the agency had used American citizens as guinea pigs without their consent, and that the least we could do was make sure something like it never happened again. It didn't. Something bigger happened instead. It got more powerful, more damaging, and more out in the open about it. And nobody had to break a single law to do that. I'm not going to tell you what to feel about that. I'm not going to tell you to delete anything, or rise up, or share this so the truth gets out, because that's not my job. I'm just going to leave it where it actually sits. And this file is still open. You already know whose hands it's in. I'm Ellie. This has been Fourth Wall. Thank you so much for watching Station 1. See you next time.
Hey, it's Chase. Thank you for watching Station 1. Our goal is to make you harder to manipulate and to show you the world that nobody else really sees. If you hit that subscribe button, we are going to deliver on that promise.